Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Crossroads of Cognizance, where we're talking about what goes on the East Coast, what goes on the West Coast, and the common themes between, how to navigate different spiritual practices and energies in your life. And we're not here dictating to you, we're simply inviting you to the conversation. So over here on the East Coast, I'm Dahlia Rose. I am the owner and keeper of Crystal Cognizance, a metaphysical shop where we do healing, sell crystals, and try to support our community locally. And on the West Coast, we have
I'm Katrina Rasbold. I and my husband and I own Crossroads Metaphysical Store in Shingle Springs, California, and that's a metaphysical store where we make most of the products that we sell. We have a number of vendors who also make their own products, and we offer a huge, extensive body of classes that people can take, as well as healing services such as crystal singing, bowl sound bath, Reiki, attunements. We also do traditional limpias and spiritual cleansings. We do readings and spell work for people, as well as sell things retail. And we have a mail order store at crossroadsoccult.com. At that store, we only sell our products that we make, not our vendors. And that's what we do every day.
so if this is your first time joining us, we definitely want to hear from you. Kick us a hello in the comments section. And as we're talking, if you feel moved to share, we'd love to hear from you. Um, on the topic of uh, the products that Katrina sells and the store that she and her husband keep in California, we were having an interesting discussion about this time of year and sort of what people are lending themselves to at this time. And so Katrina was talking about an uptick in a particular product that you all are seeing. What was that?
Candles. This one is actually blown out. And we had a where is it? Here it is. We had a rupture on this candle that I was burning for a person. And
Wow.
so I've been doing a lot of candle work for people, and then I've had a lot of people coming in to purchase candles, and they certainly are one of the most versatile spell tools you can ever use. I wrote a book called the um, Magic and Making of, I wrote it so long ago, I can't remember the title. The Magic and Making of Candles and Soap. And that's available on Amazon. And that is literally the only place you can get that book. But in that book, I talk about how soaps and candles are absolutely perfect for soaking in energy. When you hold it, you can just feel the energy just flowing through the wax and up that wick, ready to go to war. It is just ready to do whatever work you need. They are such willing spirits. And candles are just a blank slate. You can write any magical wish onto a candle, draw the picture that you want onto the austere energy or non-energy of that candle, and just fill it up, and then that candle holds space for you. So even if you're not able to be present doing the spell work, which if you can sit with that candle, it's going to be a lot more intense. But if you can't and you let that candle continue to burn, it will let your spell work continue even when you're doing something completely different. So it's really, I think, the perfect spell tool.
Absolutely. Candles are my favorite to work with. Prior to meeting with you, Katrina, I definitely had a love of candles and would use them in my practice. Use like the little 4-inch ritual candles that are supposed to
Oh
be
yeah.
used in the hour. That would be coupled with my healing sessions just to add the energy. But when I met you, I found my love of pillar candles and the jar candles, the 7 days, the 9 days, and it's definitely become a magnification of what I do. And I'd say other than crystal grids, my favorite practice. So and I guess the theme being space holding, right? Like crystal grids operate in the same way,
Yes,
and
they do.
I'm starting to see the love translate.
Crystal grids are a fantastic and powerful tool, and I'm really bothered that they don't get very much play in terms of
You don't.
discussion, magical discussion. And they're such a powerful tool, and they're so easy, and they're so individual, and they're so forgiving because you can literally put anything you want to into a crystal grid. And there are a lot of purists who will say, no, you must use this stone for this and this stone for this, and your spirit knows exactly what it needs. And if it needs a feather in there, if it needs a shell in there, it'll tell you. If it needs your business card at the center to be the focus, as long as you've got something in the center of that grid that represents your goal or you or someone you're working for, you're going to go from the outside of the grid and build inward, making your design move toward the center. Or if you're trying to push something away from you, you're going to start at the middle and work outward, empower it, send the energy through it, and it'll sit there and work for you until you take it down. But people get discouraged because in class, I'll have people make crystal grids for what they're doing, and they'll get disappointed because it's got to go away. They worked so hard and it's so pretty, and let's just leave it up. And honestly, I have a protection grid on my altar right now that has been there for about 2 months because it's just so pretty and powerful. I don't want to take it down. And I think the grid kind of tells you when it's okay, we're done, move along. And then you just swipe it and it's gone.
We used to build a grid every day, like literally new grid every day in the beginning of my store. And then we started leaving them up a little longer. And what we would find is that every couple of days when the grid was finished, a child would come in and move it. And as you're building the grid, once the energy's set, don't move it. It's then empowered. And the minute that you move even one piece, if you nudge the table or what have you, then the energy is shifted. And it never failed. It was always a child or somebody, younger than adult age. And they'd come in and they'd go, what's this? And they'd lift it up and it was like, oh, okay, grid's done.
And see, you and I have such a different response to that because your response is, okay, grid's done. Let's take it down. We're going to put up another one. Mine is like, no kids allowed in my store.
I'm not saying I wasn't thinking it. Not saying I wasn't thinking it.
Grids are fantastic. And we have an artisan from Calaveras County here in California named Loy, who makes these amazing wooden grid forms. And they're just beautiful. He etches them, and there's a flower of life when he does that's just beautiful. And we use those quite a bit. I also like the altar cloths that have the grids on them and find those helpful. But I go freeballing quite a bit on my grids. I've got these. Yeah. My dear friend, you hear me mention him a lot here. I really hope you can get out and meet him sometime, Dahlia. Eric Wolf brought me, and he is such a forager. I love the way he works. He brought me these 12 by 12 slate tiles that were pulled from a building near him, and they were all stacked up in the trash. And so they'd been on this building forever. And he brought them to me, and I use them as altar tiles so I can burn candles or honey pots or things like that on them and not worry that the place is going to catch on fire or something. I'm a little fire sensitive right now. And I've got one of those on my altar, and that's where I build my grid. And so that way I can just freestyle whatever I want, it to look like.
Well, even in the use of tiles, I'm like, man, I can go to Home Depot and just get the little squares for.
Oh yeah. Like what are they, like $2.67 or something for the little 6x6s?
As opposed to a candle holder that's like $7.
Right? I use those squares when I make pendulum boards. And I'll just take clear sticky paper and run it through my computer, the laser printer, and just not laser, the inkjet, and just print out the yes, no, maybe array that I've designed, and just on you go.
We're thrifty witches, right? Like
we are. I actually have a class that I teach called the Thrifty Witch. And it's all about all those ways. And people ask me things like, well, you should never use a candle that's been used for something else, right? I'm like, what? Because I'll go to the thrift store. I don't care if I
Yep.
buy a used candle. If it's pretty, I'm going to buy it. Um, and, you know, I figure that a candle that is in a thrift store that has been lit has as much danger of being contaminated as something you pick up from the dollar store. You don't know who's touched it. You don't know whose energy's been in it. So just clean it out. You can't clean out a candle. You ain't any kind of witch anyway. So you ought not be messing around with candles. So yeah, hell yeah, I'll use a used candle. I mean, I'll buy from the dollar store. I buy from thrift stores. I do all kinds of stuff to cut
You,
corners.
but this is the nature of how things used to be before we had technology and consumerism and things like that. The indigenous people and our ancestors just used to go outside and work with what they have. So nothing wrong with
Hmm.
that at all. And in the spirit of the conversation, being that we're in, I was saying to Katrina earlier, I didn't realize we were in a Mercury retrograde, but everything about that makes sense. We started, what was that? We started, I think, like February 3rd, or not February, it's not February yet. See, there's something wrong. We started January 13th, I think it was.
That sounds right.
Well,
Something like
or
that.
it was like last Thursday.
Yeah.
And with the uptick in sales of candles and things like that, it makes sense that people are wanting to do some work. I know I've had a kit purchased for me as a gift where it was those those long, thin Danish candles.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And you twist them together and you burn them, and as they burn, they unwind and unweave connections to
Oh,
other people.
fancy.
Yeah, right? It was a gift. It wasn't an idea.
And you know what? And the other side of that, I mean, we talk about how now my ancestors were Scotch Irish, so they were the ones that were in Appalachians. They didn't have a lot, so their magic was also from the dirt. I mean, from the very dirt, and often involved the dirt because that's what you had on hand was dirt. And so, I don't come from wealthy influence or that sort of thing, but I don't have any problem with people who can afford luxurious, wonderful, magical items. I see people with these 5 foot amethyst cathedrals, and I'm just,
Hmm.
just dying. I'm like, good for you. And I have people, because I work with hoodoo and I work with different forms of folk magic, and they'll be like, I don't need no $150 athame to do my work. I'm like, neither do I, but I want $150
Right.
athame.
Certainly gonna make me smile a little bigger.
I ain't gonna cry if I got $150 knife to cut my herbs with and my cords and stuff. Yay me.
Right.
So, and I found that modern witches are often really apologetic about when they get cool shit. I mean, just like you just
Mm.
did. Oh, it was a gift. It was a gift.
Yeah.
Good. No, I whipped my ass out and I bought this because I wanted it.
But in everything that's going on right now, you were mentioning some other retrogrades prior to the show.
Venus.
Yes. So let's talk
Venus
about
is
that.
backwards right now.
Old
Venus is,
love.
yeah, and also revisiting, looking back on relationships, getting the quality of lesson that you learned from those old relationships. And so, if you're noticing, I think it's the next week or so that it's still in retrograde, that you're having old relationships, even friendships, or people who have passed away in your family, that sort of thing, that keep coming into your mind. Even if it wasn't a pleasant relationship, but man, they're just there. It was somebody you loved that let you down. It was somebody that you loved that loved you back, whatever it might be. Whatever lesson you took from that is what you're supposed to be exploring right now. And people are like, why am I dreaming about my ex right now? Or why is, you know, why are all these people that I knew from the past suddenly popping up again? And it's because it's time for you to look at, not that don't mean you marry them. That don't mean you have a big party and invite them all over. It means that you revisit Retrograde is about the revisit, reevaluate, reconsider, recheck, go back over what was it I was supposed to know or learn from those relationships, and am I implementing that? Am I using those lessons, or does that mean somebody else with those same challenges are going to come in and teach me in a different way because didn't get
Absolutely.
it or keep it the first time?
And you don't have to engage in that sort of beating up process. You don't have to engage in that, like, oh, well, I can't believe I did. You know what? You did what you knew how to do in the moment that you did it. And even if you knew better, now you can do better at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And you don't, you really, I think too often, you're exactly right. Too often we assign the the responsibility or the weight of what we know now to the choices that we made years ago, as if we were supposed to know that.
Right.
And we can't know. And I heard a quote recently that really touched my heart, and it was about how years and years of love can be destroyed by an hour of betrayal, and
Mm.
that it can, all of a sudden, you didn't love that person, or you shouldn't have loved that person because they betrayed you. And, the truth of the matter is people should be accountable for betrayal. They should be held responsible for the damage that they do. But that doesn't undo, it doesn't mean they didn't love you for all that time. Doesn't mean you didn't love them. Doesn't mean you weren't supposed to love them. It means they made a choice for whatever reason that hurt your feelings in some way.
And
And that's
even
one of the things we look at, with the Venus retrograde.
even in the scope of looking backward on that love's not undone, but if you don't want to give them the keys to your heart again, you don't have to, but you can
No.
go on to love them because that's a natural thing. You may have history, you may have things going on, you may
Hmm.
share, you know property, children, what have you, or businesses, and you feel compelled to still love them, but you don't have to involve them so deeply in your energy field or your life.
That's very true. And all that can happen in your head and your heart. That doesn't have to be something that plays out on a physical level or
Hmm.
even a communicative level. It can be, I love this person because of the history we shared, because we have children together, because we had these experiences, because they hold a piece of the puzzle of my past that is dear to me. However, they did these actions that are deal breakers, and because of this, they can't be in my life. And that one is not heavier than the rest of it. It just redirects you to a different path.
I think getting caught up in I found myself using a phrase. I don't know if it's something I made up or heard, but spiritual blindness, as it pertains to us looking back and getting caught up in the energies of the past and the shoulds and the shouldn'ts and all of that. People are finding themselves lost to their own spirituality in those
Hmm.
moments, and so then they're like, well, I don't hear my guides anymore. My team must have left, and it is like walking into a fog, and they don't realize the fog is there. They only see space and distance between their
Hmm.
spiritual tools and connections, and it's a very interesting place because I think it stems from what we're taught with religion, where if you do bad things, God leaves,
That's a
as a
really good observation. Yeah.
as opposed to you stopped looking at God, right?
Hmm.
You stopped listening. You started listening to the pain instead of your higher self, that kind of thing. That's been coming up a lot in my healing sessions with folks this week.
I have noticed that when a person has a crisis of faith of any kind, or disconnects from the divine in some way, it's almost always because God pissed him off in some way. And that starts this idea of God has betrayed me, God has let me down. Therefore, everybody in the MLM downline, all the angels, all the spirit guides, everybody else has let me down. Y'all are just assholes. You didn't do, which means you did not do what I wanted you to do.
Right.
And so often when we have these crises of faith, it's because we've gone through some kind of trauma that was redirecting us to a better way, but we're butthurt because it didn't unfold the way that we wanted or expected it to. And so we view that as a crisis of faith or a distance from the divine. I have a thing that I really followed, and I think this one I did make up when my kids were growing up. And I've got 6 of them, and they're years apart. I mean, they're age 42 to 22 right now. And when they were teenagers, I always said, teenagers, don't stop talking to you first. You stop listening first. It only takes a few times for you to say, not now, I'm busy, I don't want to hear that shit, don't even come whining to me, before they don't. And you are then not a safe place for them to confide to. And I think it's the same way with deity. I think that with our gods, that it only takes a few times for us to say, I'm going to do this my own way and see what happens. Or, I'm really pissed that you didn't let me be with that person. You didn't let me have that job. I'm angry you took my house away. I'm angry that you took my health away. And so I'm just not, going to talk to you. And then we get mad that they're gone.
Yeah. When they in fact aren't. They're just kind of waiting for you to finish out your tantrum.
Right. We are the child on the Walmart floor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Banging that tile floor where everybody walked and everybody peed just because we didn't get our Barbie doll of the week.
Where they peed.
Wow.
Remember that. That's a great
They
visual.
did.
Like, I don't want to be on a
they
peed
did.
on floor. I can't.
You know
I'm
how
a
it
Virgo.
is.
I don't. No.
You know what's up.
Yuck. Oh my gosh. I'm stuck on that for a minute. I'm going to be like, I'm never getting on that floor again.
True story. My son worked at Walmart for something like, 5 or 6 years. He was a manager there, and man, it was a good Walmart too. I still heard some stories.
There are levels to the Walmarts. I have found some decent ones. There's a decent one in McLean that I was just blown. I mean, it was still filthy, but it was up there in levels.
Yeah. There's definitely here too. We got everything from that's the scummy Walmart to that's the hoity-toity Walmart. Yeah.
And if you're really just not about it, just go to Target.
Right on.
In all of this is this discussion of like looking back, retrogrades, and connection. You brought up another very fascinating point. The continuation of the make or break energy of 2021 into 2022.
Ooh, not just continuation, it's like the amplification. And I got to give that credit to my husband. Eric was the one that said, and he called it early 2021. He said this year alliances are going to be made or broken. It's not on the fence anymore. If you've been wavering, you're either going to commit and sign on or you're out the door. And that goes for businesses, that goes, business relationships, that goes for personal relationships, your relationship with your parents, all of that. If you've been wavering, it's time to put up or shut up. And man, that is really, I saw it unfold in kind of a stage 1 way through 2021, where some of the weaker ones just fell apart. And now it's just up there. It's like, nope, we're not playing no more. Here you go.
Right.
So I'm definitely seeing that. Lots of people leaving long-term marriages that I'm getting with my clients, and long-term friendships that, hey, I was friends with you since middle school, but you've always kind of been a jerk, and I just put up with it, and now I'm going to go.
Yeah. I had that myself in 2021. Just kind of put
Wow.
up with it, and it was a friendship, and realizing that person was, mildly intolerant when it comes to skin. So that's the best way I can say it.
That's fair. That's gracious. That's really gracious.
Uh,
Now I love
but in
something I'm sorry. Did you have more to that?
no, well, please go ahead.
I was getting ready to segue, so jump in on that if you want to.
I don't know. We can segue.
All right, if you're sure, because it sounds like
Yeah,
it's going to be something good. So
it
you
was.
brought up a thing that I love, and I think that we're going to need some space to unpack everything that's going to come up as we talk about it, because it kind of started unpacking things in my head and spooling out just in the pre-show, and that is what you said about if then. Can you go into that a little bit?
So I found myself in conversations hearing a lot of, if this, then that. If I focus more, I'll have, more happiness in my life. If I have X amount of dollars, then all my problems will be fixed. And when you hear these things, you take them in, and the more you hear them, if you actually let them speak to you, you can hear new things. And one of the new things I heard was that it's almost like you're casting a spell. So when we're
That's
spell
good.
casting, we get into the gratitude piece, the homage to the energy, oh, great spirit of X, Y, and Z that is compassionate and unfolds. You know, I thank you, and also, then bringing in, this is what I'm hoping to have then for this result. And when we say if then in our lives, we're doing essentially the same thing. You are creating an obstacle, or maybe less an obstacle, but more of you're creating an assignment for yourself that if not fulfilled, you will not get the object of your desire. And it's a false pretense. You don't need the if part. You can have what you're asking for, but now you've created 12 steps to get there instead of just walking forward.
Hmm.
So
Wow,
that was,
that is so wise and so true. One of the classes I teach in some of the series that I go through is the power of words and the conditions we put in our head on success and what that looks like. And you're so right about that. And like I was saying in pre-show, it really holds your goal hostage, that it can't happen until this happens, and it limits the way it can happen. And I've really found that people are in battlefield mentality. They're not looking at the big picture. And so they'll say,
mm,
I need to get my light bill paid. I just need enough money for my light bill to get paid. They're not looking at the big picture of, honey, if you just need money for your light bill to get paid, you're not making enough money. And that's the problem. So let's address that. Let's address the fact that you're not making enough money for basic needs, rather than, I just got to get this one light bill paid and then everything's hunky dory. Let's look at getting some prosperity in there. Well, I can't have prosperity until I get a better job. I can't have prosperity until my grandma dies and leaves me her house, or whatever it might be. We got all these conditions. Like there's just this one road to prosperity that people get in their heads. And no, you need to open up to every way that
right.
goal can be fulfilled.
You never know what it would look like. And sometimes, especially when it comes to money, sometimes what you're looking at is an opportunity to save money. That same light bill that you're saying, well, I just need to have it paid. What if it
Hmm.
was that you overpaid last month? And or, you know, uh I'm very thrifty when it comes to electricity, so we've had $7 light bill at the shop because I refuse to turn on the lights,
Hmm.
you know, and that was the money saver that led to us being able to use that money for something else. And you're 100% right. When we opened the shop, I was like, we just need to make rent. Boy, was that limiting. I can't even
Because you
begin to
just made
tell you.
it, didn't you?
I mean, it was painful. It was
Hmm.
like, what is going on? We'd hit rent and then everything else would drop. And so at that point, I was like, oh no, 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 no. We can't do this. And it wasn't, make no mistake, it was not about the money. But when you are tied to certain things that are part of your quality of life, and you limit them in that way, you create other
Hmm.
obstacles. So no, I couldn't be happy enough to hang out with my friends because I only just made rent. you
Yeah.
know?
And you
Or
create a position of fear, is what it
yeah,
is. I'm going to
and
lose the
lack.
shop if I don't make rent. I'm
Yep,
terrified this shop is not going to pay for itself.
yep. And so you
You
can't
are so
enjoy
right.
anything else. I
That's
mean,
so true.
even the food tastes bad. It's like I don't want this. I can't be present for the joy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just so true. And so many people do get very specific with their spell work and don't look at I've had lots of people say, I want a new car, I want it to be this make, I want it to be this model, I want it to cost this much. When you know let's say I want a powder puff blue 1969 Mustang and I only want to pay $5,000 for it. That's it. You missed the red Mustang that was $4,000 because you were locked into your idea of what it ought to be.
Right. So diving, one thing that we can take away from this section of the conversation is, state what you want, but be open to the possibilities because maybe that powder blue Mustang has a transmission issue, and you haven't exactly gotten to the core of why you even wanted it in the first place. Maybe it was about the memory you had with your dad building cars,
Hmm.
and you think powder blue Mustang because that's what he always wanted, but in fact, you could have your childhood Mustang that you guys built together that
Hmm.
was less money, as Katrina said, or it was a different circumstance.
That is so, so true. And yeah, people, I mean, it's not a scary place. People approach magic as a place of fear where you've got to be super specific. Or here's the big one: I don't want any blowback from this spell. I don't want any negative repercussions. Magic isn't sitting there waiting for you to jack up. It's not some place it's like waiting for you to trip and say the wrong thing so it can just pounce on you and fuck up your life in some phenomenal way. That's not what it does. It's there for abundance. It's energy, pure and simple, nothing else. It doesn't have designs on screwing you over. So the only way it has designs on screwing you over is if you're using that energy to screw somebody else over. And if that's
Yeah.
happening, then that becomes the nature you have assigned to the energy. So, sure, that's going to be all around you.
This is reminding me as you're talking about magic waiting to like hit you with the as Corby used to say, the clue by four. Um, it's from Hollywood, essentially. I mean, look at the difference. I don't know. Have you seen the new Craft movie? Um,
No, I don't know. How
did
is
you see
it?
the old one?
What do we think? Oh, God, how long ago when it came out? My
Well, I'm
son, my son had such a boner for that girl. What was her name? Started with an F. Fiona something.
oh the mean one.
Oh Lord, it was game on, and he's 42. So and he was a teenager. What that movie's got to be what 25 years old, 30.
I didn't even realize the movie was that old. But so now we
Yeah.
have we have contrast between the two, right? So you
Mhm.
have the old movie that was all, I mean, it was dark and broody, right? And that was the
Mhm.
concept in Hollywood, was if you involve yourself in magic, bad things will happen, and that was the message they were trying to push. Like initially it starts out great, and then when you start trying to manipulate people's lives, then you get into some touchy spaces, and then at the end of the movie they put Fiona in
Oh,
a psych
I'm
ward.
sorry. Thank you,
Rusa,
Elspeth.
sorry, Fiona. They put her in a psych ward, right? And so
Mhm.
if that didn't put you off magic, then there were plenty of other Hollywood films to do that. Well, in the
Mhm.
new Craft movie, I was like, man, how are they gonna do this? The kids of the kids, right? So, um, it actually ends up being it was a place of empowerment in the way that they ended it. You know, they did do the binding of the friend, and they went through their trials and their tribulations, and they seduced the boy, and it ended negatively. But in the end of the movie, without spoiling it, there was a lot of empowerment and learning instead of we're afraid of this concept. And
Yeah.
I appreciated that so much because the story does need to change, the narrative needs to change. There has been it it takes seeing it in a movie or a TV show for our collective to shift on a topic. And you know, the places that magic can go now, it's very exciting. It's learning yourself, it's learning your motives and initiatives that is going to carry the energy of your candle or your grid or your, you know, manifestations forward.
Mhm. That's
And the
so
push to know
true.
yourself.
That is so true. And even the show Once Upon a Time on TV, over and over and over and over and over, magic has a price. Magic always has a price. It just doesn't. I'm sure you're going to invest energy in it, but it doesn't have a price any more than any other day-to-day life experience has. And people try to externalize magic as some separate event or separate situation. That's like saying praying has a price.
Mm.
I mean, you won't ever hear a Christian saying that, oh, I hope that prayer doesn't come back on me. I hope it's the same thing, y'all. Just go at it with a good heart. Now, I have plenty of people come to me like, I just really want to fuck them up. They were really mean to me. They did terrible things to me. Can we do this? I had a guy write to me just this week. I've been burning doom candles and it's not doing anything. Can you cast a spell and put a really big curse on my brother? I'm like, no. And that was my whole reply to the email. I wrote out this really long thing about why I couldn't do it and how it went against and I just was like, no. That was the whole conversation.
Enough
But
said.
if you're doing stuff like that, if you're actively trying to hurt and harm somebody just because they pissed you off in some way, or you're trying to advantage yourself over somebody else, that means you are putting energy into that spell work. And to pull up that energy and send out that energy means you put that energy into you and through you.
Hmm.
So, you don't run no water through a pipe and not get water on the pipe.
I love that. I love that
Thank you.
analogy. That was my, and I
You
did,
don't
that
pee on
was,
a Walmart floor and not get pee on yourself.
ew, oh. I am throwing up all over the place inside. um,
Inside the Walmart.
that was one of my questions for you in terms of what do you think about people that are not think about the person, but the concept that, you know, well, I'm going to do this spell work to show them, or I'm going to do these things to show them that I don't need them, that I'm better off without them. You know, what are the energetic ramifications of that? Does that come back negatively, or
Hmm.
put negativity into the work?
First of all, I think that we are far too overblown on the idea of anybody giving a shit about what what we're you're going to show them what? Are they even looking? They got to be looking for you to show them something. And if it's somebody you got
Absolutely.
to show something to, it means you're hoping they're looking. If it's that bad, just don't be around them. Just cut and clear and be gone. But if you do that kind of work, I do think it contaminates your motives for why you're trying to better your life. So you're trying to create, I'm going to be successful just to show them. How about just be successful? How about you not let them impact what you're doing in your life? That's my approach to it. I don't think it necessarily, I don't know, it might minimize it because you're putting energy toward them instead of you.
Hmm.
But my thought is if they're at a place you got to show them something and you want them looking at you to see it, you know, blow your shit up or something because you better be, impressive. Most people you got to show something to don't give a shit about you. And that's why
Mm.
you got to show them. It's like the child, how does a child call attention to the fact, no, I really wanted that Barbie doll. I'll show mom, I'll throw a fit.
Yep,
Mom
they
don't
get
care. Mom's going to
explosive.
haul your ass to the car.
Right. Absolutely. And that sort of like if it's fueled by anger, say what comes to my mind is that energy is limited. It's something that always will need to be satiated. There's no ending to that when you're fueled
Hmm.
by anger or jealousy or resentment. Like that's an animal that's never satisfied, and
Hmm.
so it's going to keep eating, and when you reach your goal it's not going to be enough. At least it seems that way to me.
Oh, it's hungry. It for sure is. And it can start to take over parts of your life you don't even want it in. And
Mm.
you just, I understand the position of a person who's always been a doormat, who's always rolled over for everybody else, who has always made everybody else okay. Somebody is mean to them, they're like, that's okay. They're probably just having a bad day. That's okay. I know that's just the addiction talking.
Mm.
That's okay. They probably were just tired. Always trying to just make everything better. I get that in a really uncomfortable and familiar way. I get that to the point that one day you're just like, that's enough.
Yeah.
I'm done. So I do understand that perspective. But at the same time, if you are to follow the model that you set up, if you are living your life based on an anticipated response from somebody else, you done fucked up. That's not what your life needs to be. Your life needs to be situated around what brings you joy, what brings you happiness, what fulfills you, not what is going to get a reaction from somebody else. Shit. Be the flipper, don't be the ball.
And for those of you that might be out there cringing about selfishness, well, wait a minute, if I make it about me, here's the kicker. You're going to make it better for everybody else because you're going to be more fulfilled. You're not going to be making decisions based on lack, on things that don't fulfill you, as Katrina was saying. So
And
it's
the
it's a
truth
weird
is,
switch.
it's always about you anyway. And
Yep.
if you pretend it's not, look at the structure of that. Oh, I can't be selfish. I can't make it all about me because so and so needs this and this. Well, now it's about you because you're a martyr. So, in
Mm.
some way, it's always going to be about you. And if we think about children, for instance, like I said, I got a lot of kids. I got 6 kids, all different personalities, every single one of them. But one of the things I did is I wasn't available for everything they needed. I didn't always show up. And part of that was explaining other people have needs too. No, I'm
Mhm.
not going to take you to see your friend because I have a headache. And I'm going to lay my ass down in a dark room, put a cold cloth on my head, and you come get me if somebody's bleeding or the house on fire. There were times that I wasn't there, and it was, a strategic move in some way. Sometimes it was just, you know what? I'm not going to do that because I don't feel like doing it. And I'm going to resent it if I do it.
Right.
And, I had one of my kids, I think it was my third son, or one of them said, well, what if I don't want to do something you want me to do? I'm like, yeah, I don't flow that way, son. You can't roll the rocks up the mountain. But it was just to get this idea, the world is not going to stop because you want something. Everything isn't going to fold around what you want. And it doesn't, but I didn't stop my kids from asking, from saying, hey, I would like to do. Now, if it's something they needed, I was there. But
Right.
if it's just a want, that was tempered according to what I was able to do. I wasn't necessarily going to rearrange my whole day. Now, I might, if that seemed like something that felt important or that, but I'm not going to be manipulated into completely changing my day because a child wanted something. So that a lot of people thought that was really heartless of me. But I wanted to raise kids that would understand that other people have needs too, and that balances. with what you need. And I think that's the main thing. I mean, I think overall your life should be set up in a way that makes you happy. You should not sacrifice your life to make somebody else happy. That's not the purpose of being here.
Not at all. And
So
balance was the
that,
exact word that popped into my head as you were talking about that. And so was compassion. I mean, when my
mhm,
kids were born, it was the first time I ever thought that, I was like, how do I teach them compassion? I can easily think about teaching them, shoes, walking, feed themselves, other things like that. But how do you teach them compassion and care? And I think that, we can have conversations about it, but at the end of the day, when you set boundaries and you teach them that it's not a punishment, but simply because you don't have the bandwidth, you don't have the energy, or, other people
mhm.
have needs, you teach them compassion. And I think, you know, I'm going to say it as a mom. I think I have two of the most compassionate little boys on the planet, because when I'm laying down, they become considerate. When I have a
Mhm.
headache, they lower their voices and ask questions rather than going, "Can you just get up and make me food because you always do?" You know, I and they will check on each other too. If one notices something, they'll say, "Hey, mommy is, out of commission right now, and we need to settle." They don't use those big words, but or they'll come and they'll rub my back, and and
Oh,
and
well,
the
that's
only
lovely.
way, yes, it's adorable. They're saving grace when they're driving me nuts. um it's the only way they're going to learn. And I think that extending that to the adults in your life who didn't have those kinds of starts is important, because you can better your relationship, you can better them and yourselves as you get creative about how you're going to implement those boundaries. And if they don't respect them, at the end of the day, again, we're in a make or break year of amplification. Like,
We are
bye.
indeed. You know, you
Bye,
made me
Susan.
think of something. I was not always perfect. I don't want to pretend like I was always perfect with that theme that I had. I remember in 1997, I had just given birth. And I mean, when I say just given birth, I had home births. And so I'd given birth earlier that day. And I was nursing the baby. I was laying in my bed, and I kind of had my back to the outside world. I was turned into the bed to the baby, facing the wall. And I felt these presences by my bed. And I'd been kind of dozing off and on, because it was an interesting day. So I turned over, and my four kids are there, in descending order, like the tallest, the oldest, all the way down to Delina, who was the youngest. And they're just standing there looking at me. And I was like, oh, they're having like a little Madonna moment there. That's nice. And then one of them, I think it was Joe, said, "So you going to make dinner or what?"
Oh, after giving birth. And then
I called Domino's.
to me, you still set a boundary, but wow, right? Like, their first thought is basic needs, not,
Basic
you
needs,
know,
man.
she just pushed out a kid, brought life into the world. She looks
Yeah.
tired. And it's not a home run the first go round. The first couple times they're gonna cry about it. What do you mean you don't want to play
Well, and
with
they're
me? Listen.
they're all standing there, good and well. They had a meeting beforehand to discuss,
Okay,
or
who's
else they
gonna do
all
it?
wouldn't have been there.
Who's gonna say it?
Yeah, yeah.
The others giving the one strength. That's
Like they're
awesome.
all throwing rock, paper, scissors.
It was like a union meeting.
Yeah, it was. It was. So no,
Oh,
it was not always perfect. I don't want to pretend like, I had this ideal compassion thing going on. I sure didn't. You aced me on that one. Lapped me big time. But when I could, I tried to teach them that, hey, there's things to consider outside of what you're thinking and needing right there. And you know what? Up until about, I would say, age, heck, 9 or 10, it's really hard to get that in there. I mean, they're in survival mode, so they're absolutely focused on what they need and what they want. I read somewhere once that the ability to really extend compassion doesn't really even take hold until a person's in their late 20s.
interesting.
And that prior to that, they're still in that almost maiden creator space, that early space where they are making their own world and
Mm.
creating their own impressions of the world, and that it's really hard for them to externalize before late 20s. And I could say that I've seen that in play, definitely.
Yeah. Well, and when you think about college, right, that's when most bonds are solidified. When you're talking about fraternities and sororities or just people that you
Mm-hmm.
traveled up those years with,
Right.
you have compassion for them, and that's when communities are really formed and built or, broken. And then
Mm,
going on through the later years of life, either with those folks or not. So that makes
mm-hmm.
absolute sense to me.
Yeah, I think also when if we are blessed with the opportunity to become a parent, that externalizes you into compassion pretty dang fast if you are tuned into your child and, you know, involved and interested in the parenting experience. There's a lot of people that don't have that compassion come up either from for hormonal reasons or because their life is just not in a place to be compassionate. And that's where I was with my first three kids when they were
Hmm.
born. I just was so young. I mean, I was 16, 18, and 20 when I had my kids, and I didn't have the ability to look beyond myself the way I should have. I attended
Yeah.
to their basic needs. They were fed, they had housing, but I was not at all good for their emotional needs until
Mm.
the second wave of kids when I was in my 30s. And even then, I really needed some fine tuning. There'd been a lot of trauma, and I just was so broken and uh, traumatized that I wasn't a good mom.
Yeah.
I don't think I was a good mom till I got into my 40s.
I mean, it's trial and error, really. I mean, I think that societally we have this expectation that, we're gonna ace it as soon as they pop out, and that's the worst time. I know
Yeah.
I myself had postpartum with both boys, one a little longer than the other, and feeling like they weren't mine. No, I didn't. This just didn't come out of my body, but I'm forced to take care of it,
Mhm.
and going through
Yeah.
those things, and so there should be space, right? We're talking about setting boundaries and compassion, and sometimes there's a chemical reason, as you said, hormonally
Mhm.
there's a chemical reason why that's not there. Sometimes it's a functional reason why that's not there, especially when we're talking about neurodiversity.
Yes.
Compassion is a whole different animal in a person who has neurodiverse, and if they're or who is neurodiverse, and if they have Asperger's, I mean, forget it.
Yeah.
Compassion is a foreign concept that has to be learned.
Asperger's is one of the conditions that runs through our family, as is ADHD and different types of anxiety disorders. And so every one of my kids has this different thing, this spectrum to navigate according to their
Hmm.
own specific neurodiverse needs. And I didn't know shit about that when I was raising him. I had no clue. To me, ADHD was something that they diagnosed you with when you couldn't sit still in school.
Yeah.
That's how I knew it to be. Yeah. And so I didn't even know to learn those things. And we didn't know about those things to the extent that we know now, and we didn't know about the different levels of anxiety that can create problems for people. And I wish I knew then what I know now, because I could have been a much more compassionate mom and understood things a lot better and created better outcomes for all of my kids.
Well, and the science goes further. I myself keep up with ADD and ADHD research because it starts to explain how it manifests differently in women and men. Not that we have to have this lengthy conversation about it, but men, it tends to be activity, and and female bodies tend to manifest it as anxiety and depression.
Mm,
And the inattention varies. So we have all these things now to implement alongside even all the magic that we've been talking about. As these things play out, if you are experiencing, a hormonal imbalance, or you're trying to set boundaries and you're going through different stages of life, and especially in this make or break year, having compassion for yourself to say,
mm,
hey, something's off here. Maybe I need a candle to help me to hold space. or maybe I need to build a grid, or you know what? In this Venus retrograde, I am seeing so many red flags that maybe we are, better off as friends. Maybe maybe that lengthy relationship or marriage, it's time to do something different, instead of making the easy or the safe choice. Um, so it
Life is not putting up with easy or safe right now on any
can't.
level. And one of the things that COVID taught us is what we can and can't tolerate. And if we can't be quarantined with somebody and tolerate their behaviors and their thoughts and their presence and how they chew food, we need to rethink that.
Sometimes it really comes down to that. I can't stand the sound of saliva. Or they're peeing on the Walmart floor and I just can't do this anymore. Man, we have had a time and a half in this conversation. We've navigated so many different territories. And as we continue through this Mercury retrograde that ends in February, and then Katrina was saying before the show that this Venus retrograde is about 2 weeks long, so we've got a couple more days. Dig in deep, guys, and don't be afraid of that make or break. You know, it makes space for more. And as you're navigating these things, if you feel a distance from your deities or your guides or your ancestors, check in with yourself to make sure that you're not the one who disconnected instead of them leaving you. There's so much we have available to us as well with the tools and the candles and the grids and the crystals, and then hopefully the community as well. You can always reach out to me or Katrina. Um, if not for advice, we both have services, and we're just here to support and help in the ways that we know how. But here we are at the end of our broadcast once again, and it's not goodbye. It's see you later until next Thursday. Thank you everyone for your comments, and we will catch you next time on
Next
Crossroads of
time.
Cognizance.
Bye
Bye
bye.
everyone.